All right, welcome back to the Death Lineup, talking Warriors basketball here on BSPN with my son, Brian. What's going on?
Nothing much. Nothing much. How are you?
Good. We're going to go into a bunch of Bry's fits today. We have 4 more to look at. We're going to do shorter segments on them, but this is like a fun time of the year for you because the NBA draft is in exactly 1 week. Are you as excited, even though the Warriors don't have the highest of picks here?
Yeah, I think the NBA draft is definitely like an event that I look forward to um more than most events in the NBA. Like it's definitely something that I was just a fan of being an observer and just seeing what everyone thought. And this year I feel like I've definitely learned a lot more about each individual prospect than I ever have. So I'm definitely more excited. I like it more than free agency. I like it more than the All-Star game. He's probably my second favorite behind, the finals or something.
Mm-hmm. We're also going to talk about Jordan Poole. There was a piece by Anthony Slater earlier in the week about his future, and then we'll also dig into the non-Warriors draft stuff towards the end as well. But I guess we got to start with Jonathan Kuminga, who we've talked a ton about this offseason and the whole season, actually late in the season as well, when he wasn't playing in the playoffs. So there was a story that came out, ESPN, Jonathan, do you know how to pronounce his last name?
Givony.
Jonathan Givony. He's a draft guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
So he said, or he wrote, that the Warriors are exploring the option of acquiring a high draft pick in exchange for Kuminga. Now, if you've heard anything that we've said about the playoffs and the offseason so far, you would probably hear that comment and go, well, that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If Kerr's not going to play Kuminga in year 2, then why would they go and trade for another 19-year-old and start over again? And Kerr's not going to play that kid for, with his vets. And so on the surface, it sounds kind of like a silly idea, but then you were telling me that you think it could be something more than just trading Kuminga for a pick. What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when I initially saw the report, I just started thinking of like that. It makes no sense of why they would want to go now take another teenager who Kerr's not going to play. Then I started putting together a couple of players where it's like, okay, these guys have some upside, but they also probably could play on day one, and I'd be excited if the Warriors took them. And then I see a couple of tweets, and I'm like, darn, why didn't I think of this to begin with? It would making a trade for a top pick could invite an additional trade. It could be Kuminga for, Kuminga in 19 for say pick number 6, and pick number 6 could be more of an intriguing asset to teams with a player like Pascal Siakam. If the Raptors are looking to move off of Siakam, the top 6 pick in this draft might look more intriguing to them than Jonathan Kuminga, who would be due for a rookie extension next season. Whereas if they take someone in the top 6, that resets the rookie clock. They have 3 years before they have to pay that guy big money if the pick turns out. So, I mean, yeah, if they look to trade Kuminga for a top pick, I think I would probably bet that pick is getting moved as long as Steph Curry is on this roster.
So do you think some of this, now we've all been watching Steve Kerr's quotes very closely, and you remember what was it, last offseason, or was it right before the season started, where Stephen A. Smith had the comment about Kuminga about
Last offseason?
Yeah, and at that point we were like, that sounds kind of weird. Like, what's going on there? But if you go back to that point and you look at what happened during the season, there's probably some smoke to that fire, whether or not he was not taking his offseason seriously, or whether he was not communicating, whatever it was that caused Stephen A. Smith to make that comment. It does seem like there is a communication gap between the Warriors and Kuminga about what they need from him and about what he wants to be as a player right now. And then you go back, we talked about this already with Kerr's comments about, the Miami Heat players and their roles and how great it is. And it's kind of like a statement that people can take as to say, oh, well, maybe the Warriors players don't understand their roles. And, my whole thing was like, how could they? They're like 20 years old. Like they've only known how to be the best player on their team. And now you're asking them to take a step back for the sake of winning.
That's what you do for, and to add to that point, like that's why, like the Aaron Gordon and Andrew Wiggins case, like they were the guys, and then they realized 7 years into their career that they're not the guy. So they need to do the role player thing. It's hard to do that with an 18 or 19-year-old who, with Kuminga, like they were saying Paul George comparisons, right? Like this is that's not a take a step back player. That's I'm going to try to be the best player on a championship team kind of guy. Paul George, earlier in his career in the Pacers days, but like that's to say that, to try and make these high potential top pick rookies to learn what Andrew Wiggins and Aaron Gordon did 8 years into their career versus 2 days into their career. Just, now looking back at it from that perspective that I just thought of, that makes me think about it a little more.
If we only had two, let's say you had two options here. One of them is Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and maybe it's Patrick Baldwin or whomever, young players, Jordan Poole. Those guys, Steve Kerr goes, you know what? We really have to look into the future of this team. We have to figure out a way. We're going to take a few more losses and really allow these kids to grow and to play more and to play these late games. And the Warriors go 44-38, and they're 6th seed again, just like this year. Or the flip side is that you do move some of those guys, and maybe you get to a 50-win season, but your entire future is in the hands of sort of, what's going to happen these next 2 or 3 years. And then there's like a dramatic fall off. Like, would you rather see the Warriors take the hit now while Steph is in his prime? Or would you rather see them do the 98 Chicago Bulls thing where it just becomes, nothing but young players and your stars are all gone?
I think, I've definitely backpedaled and changed my opinion multiple times regarding the situation. I was definitely someone who thought the 2-timeline plan was working, when in reality, the win now plan was working in spite of the develop now plan, looking back at it. But I think as long as you have Steph, Clay, and Draymond on this roster, I think that there needs to be a change in terms of how many young players are on this roster, right? There's who's guaranteed for next year too. It's Rollins, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Kuminga, Moody, this upcoming draft pick. That's 5 already, and Jordan Poole. That's 6. That's 6 players. I feel like Jordan Poole maybe doesn't count in this grouping because he's gotten paid the big bucks. He's a solid playoff rotation player up until this past season. I guess it's difficult with different situation with him, but with those guys, they're unproven playoff rotation players. And I think if this postseason has taught me anything and how I approach the draft, really, is that how important and how great it is to have a guy who you are confident that can help you in the postseason, and can be a contributor in the postseason. And the guys on the Warriors roster that you're confident that are, in under contract going into next season is the 5 starters with Steph, Clay, Dre, Looney, Wiggs, GP2 off the bench, and that's it. Jordan Poole's, we don't totally know. We think we know. We're not totally sure. But I just think that as long as Steph, Clay, and Draymond are on this roster, I wouldn't say get rid of everyone, like get rid of everything and just do vets. And once those guys retire, then you're in a purgatory of 12 years of trying to rebuild or whatever the heck, how long it would be once you have nothing. I think that they should get rid of the high value ones and keep like Moody. Like Moody, it feels like he gets it. It feels like if we saw something from the playoffs, is that he understands how to be an impact player and how to impact winning. But other than that, like if you could sell high on Poole and Kuminga, like I would totally entertain it and try and get, the Siakam that I was talking about, or even Siakam doesn't even feel honestly like that realistic. Like just a player with that can fills the needs, fills the voids that are on this team that you can for sure guarantee is helpful in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's hard because it seems like, well, we know for sure they and James Wiseman tanked his value, and they took pennies on the dollar of what they could have gotten a year before had they traded him prior. And it looks like it's kind of happening the same thing with Kuminga. Like when we were talking about last year, deadline stuff, what could you get for Kuminga? It seemed like a lot more than maybe what we're hearing this year. And that's also the other thing is you have these assets, and the more Steve Kerr talks about them, it's almost like their value just decreases. And it's not like he talks about them like they're the next big thing. And maybe some of that is just he's not a marketer, he's not a salesman, he's just a basketball coach. But I do worry that if you do trade Kuminga, you're only getting maybe about 75% of the value that you would have gotten last year. And that sucks because now the leverage is not with the Warriors. The leverage is with the other teams, knowing that Steve Kerr only, really wants to coach these vets, and knowing that Steph and Draymond just really want to play with smart vets. And so, in a sense, like if you had one team message, it's like, hey, even if you don't like these kids, like the worse we talk about them and the worse the stuff happens in the media, the more their value goes down, which decreases our opportunity to actually get something for them. So let's be on the same page here. And that didn't happen. Like it just seems like these guys, their value is just tanking like as the offseason goes on.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and it sucks because maybe I'm definitely less on Wiseman, but I feel like after learning a few things this season and really just analyzing, I guess probably the most I've paid attention to the NBA season. Like I can confidently say that I think Kuminga has all-star potential. You look at what he is, like a 6'7" wing who is a super athletic 6'7" wing who can play, borderline almost elite defense at the point of attack, who, shot 37% from three, or whatever it was from three. That's actually like solid and above expectations. But and the one question you have about him is shot creation. But other than that, like this is a guy who kind of ticks off a lot of like what you want in a two-way wing. And being a two-way wing at 6'7" is already something that should be super valued across the league. So yeah, if they were to trade Kuminga, you're right, it would be at the bottom of his value as since he's gotten drafted. Really, I mean, I'm trying to remember. Like after the first year, I'm not entirely sure how I remember the value being, but definitely right now, it definitely seems to have dropped. He didn't play a minute. He played 2 minutes maybe in the playoffs. And yeah, I think it's tough because there's a couple routes where it's like, I think, we're doing all these Bry fits, but, if I had to bet my bottom dollar on it, I don't think we're drafting at 19. I think that, there's a couple routes where if you were to trade, a few of the young players for an established veteran / star or whatever, then I think you would want to keep the pick. If the pick didn't already go to the other team, I think you'd want to take the pick, keep the pick, and draft upside. I feel like there's no one in this draft that, yeah, there's probably a few guys, but there's no one in this draft who I feel like the Warriors should be like super confident about plugging into their rotation. Obviously, there's always the win now guys, but I just feel like the more and more they go away from upside and start going more to like helping them win right now, like we're diving into Jacob Evans, Jordan Bell territory. Like I still think that you should draft upside and potential over going for another Damian Jones. But I think, yeah, just if everything, if they don't trade any of these young guys, and I think the picks got to go. Like I just keep saying, like you keep thinking about guaranteed roster spots on this team and how many of them are young players. Like I can't imagine there's 6 players under the age of 21 who have a spot on this roster going into the next season.
Yeah. If you were to bet, if someone put a gun to your head and said, hey, you have to choose, do you see Kuminga getting moved, or do you see him opening up camp on the Warriors next year?
I see him opening up camp
Me
on
too.
the Warriors.
I think so too. I'll be really surprised if they do deal him, but some of that, I will admit, is because of how long they held on to Wiseman. because they really believed that he was going to be the guy. And a lot of that has to do with who owns the team and what his feelings are about some of these players. He had to admit defeat on that one, last trade deadline when the Warriors did trade him for Gary Payton or the picks to get Gary Payton.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about another guy, Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole was the center of an article that Anthony Slater wrote for The Athletic earlier in the week. He wrote that Poole is not being actively shopped. There is no edict to cut salary, and his side has been given no current indication that his future will be elsewhere. But Slater also said that doesn't mean that Poole is safe, because really the only person who is safe on this roster is Steph Curry, and everyone else is, sort of in flux. But, we had been thinking about what do you do with Jordan, and could you move Jordan, and what kind of player could you get for Jordan? And, especially as this draft is coming up, Jordan's an attractive piece for maybe a team who doesn't want to draft someone who's 19 years old. Instead, they want to draft a guy who's 22 years old. So what did you think about that piece? And why do you think that information is sort of out there right now?
I don't know, because I honestly might tell you that I think Jordan Poole is more likely to get shipped than Kuminga, simply because of how much you have to pay him per year, and because of the punch, and because he's better as a starter, but the person who he needs to replace doesn't want to be replaced. Like, all these factors, like, I just feel like if there's a player that I'd bet on to be gone this offseason, it's not Draymond, it's not Jonathan Kuminga. I would bet on Jordan Poole. So to see that article come out, and I don't know if the timing is totally that important, because we've seen so many things since the offseason started. Already it feels 2 days in, and it's so many players' names are being talked in discussions and quotation marks, but geez. But yeah, because we talked about it, and I'm like, I just don't buy it. But at the same time, we don't want to believe that Slater is this kind of front office microphone or megaphone.
Yeah, and it is, Slater's really smart. He's really savvy. He knows he could sense something. I don't think the Warriors themselves would really want to try and use him as a PR person, knowing how savvy he is. So I don't buy that part. But what I wonder is, if Slater, if the timing of it is because Slater's out there saying, okay, here's what the situation is now. And then if that changes, he could always update the piece and go, well, that's what was told, or that's how it was going. Now it is shifted. Now it has changed. Because you could always pivot if that's what you're hearing.
That's such a large pivot, though, don't you think? It's not I came away from that article thinking, and honestly, I read it a week ago or whenever it came out. I'm trying to kind of remember, but it did give off the vibe that Jordan Poole was staying, even though, he might have said explicitly, this doesn't guarantee his safety. Yeah. But it did feel like all signs are pointing towards they've resolved something. But, all those things I list to you, it just seems like you can't bring him back at the same time. So, if you go from Jordan Poole's, the verbiage or the wording makes it sound like Jordan Poole's safe, and then the next piece you put out is just pivoting and literally rewriting everything you said, it's kind of a large pivot.
But also plans can change. With the
isn't it their job to predict that, or to keep us informed and maybe even ahead of that stuff?
Yeah, but you remember when Marcus Thompson was on with Kawakami. I don't know. Did you actually hear that podcast?
Yeah, with the A's thing.
So Marcus Thompson, they were talking about how Bob Myers dealt with them, and how they could tell when Bob Myers was frustrated with them, and how he would disagree with what they wrote. So it's not like, it's not like you can, it's not like they're writing stuff directly that the Warriors are just gonna like they're saying things that maybe aren't the greatest. And so then, if that is kind of the case, and that is how Jordan Poole's camp feels, because obviously Slater has a source with Jordan Poole who is saying that, yeah, as far as we know, nothing has been stated. Then the Warriors see that and they go, oh, well, we do have to change that because there are things going on. And so the story can change in that way as well. But I'm with you. I think Slater is probably on top of it because he's just really good at his job. And he probably does have a good sense of what both camps are feeling. But you do put that caveat in there that says, things can always change, or he can always, no one is safe and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I guess, would you be more surprised if Poole was not on this roster next year, or Kuminga not on this roster next year?
I'd probably go with Kuminga, and I feel like the majority would probably. No, sorry, I would go with Poole not being on this roster, and I feel like the majority would lean Kuminga because it makes more sense. The guy who doesn't make as much money, maybe still on a rookie contract. It's probably an easier contract to trade. But yeah, I just think there's so many external factors and internal factors that could lead to Poole not being a Warrior over Jonathan Kuminga. The thing
Yeah.
with Kuminga, it is weird though. Like it just feels like there's something missing with Jonathan, and there's something we don't know because you hear the Stephen A thing last year, and I remember we were talking about it, and I was telling you, I was like, I see this guy working out every single day. Like I don't know what the issue is here, and on his Instagram, and then we go to the fast forward to the playoffs, and we're unsure as to why he got yanked from the rotation completely when you seem to have such an improvement of a second year. Like it looked like he was going to be a value playoff rotation impact player for that year, and he didn't get any run, and now we're confused, and now you're hearing all these reports of maybe them moving off of him, and I continue to see him working out every day. Like I don't know what we're missing here. Like we're definitely missing something, and I'm wondering who's going to report it or who's going to find out what it is. But maybe it's something along the lines of, and again, I don't know the insides of this stuff. Like I don't know. I know don't teams have these trainers, and they tell you when you go into the offseason, like, this is what we want you to work on. And, I don't know if they then deploy their trainers to go and work out with those guys, whether it's at the facility or somewhere else. But I do know that Kuminga has not stayed in California.
Well, didn't he give off like 4 places he's going to be in the offseason?
Yeah. Like, I don't think he's been in California for an offseason yet. Like, I don't know if he's going to the facility at all. I think he's been in Florida. I know that. I don't know why I know this, but his I believe it's his agents. I think they're based out of Florida, or it's like his training group is based out of Florida. I follow a kid, his name's Gianni, and his older brothers are either Jonathan's trainers or his agents. And I know they're like close. Like Gianni, this 19-year-old, and Kuminga, this 20-year-old, they're like close buddies. And I know that family is from Florida. So, and it looks to be where Kuminga is right now. So I wonder if it's just like this guy is like, not working on the things we're telling him to work on, and he's refusing help from our guys, and he just continues to work with his guys who aren't necessarily helping him on the things that we think he needs help with. Maybe it's something like that. Like that would, if I heard that, I guess I wouldn't be too shocked. But other than that, like I wonder what they could tell me that, just we're not seeing whatsoever.
Who else is working out on Instagram? Ben
Jordan?
Simmons.
Oh, yeah, he looks big. Hey, did you see the report, though? I know you mentioned that Jonathan Givony did the thing where Warriors are looking to move up. I don't know if you saw KOC's mock draft today. He said they're going to move back. He said, I heard that Jonathan Givony said they're moving up. I heard they're moving back. You can't trust any insider anymore. I probably trust KOC a little more because I know the knock. Being on draft Twitter, like they don't like KOC. Like they're not fans of him. Well, it's because he's doing the NBA and draft. So like he can't, like if you really think about it, like his draft intel can't be as good because he's covering the NBA full time. And these draft people on Twitter are doing the draft full time. They're watching all these college, the college videos, the OTE videos, the G League videos. Like KOC can't possibly, like it's impossible to cover that full strength, both of those things. And so apparently what people say is that KOC's beliefs and his draft I don't know if it's mentality or draft strategy or just his approach to the draft is more based from intel than it is from his own findings, because he has a lot of sources around the league. So if someone tells him, I think he was the first guy to be like, yeah, I think Brandon Miller is like number 2 over Scoot, and I think that's like a pure intel like thing from him because no one else had it. And then then now it seems like it's the regular where But yeah, I know that KOC gets some hate. I love what KOC's stuff looks visually the best to me, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I know he gets some slack on draft Twitter for that. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some of the other 4 people that you wanted to add to possible people who could fit. Oh man, let's see what happened here.
What happened to Taylor Hendricks?
What happened there? It was it looked so nice when I did it the first time. So let's talk about it, yeah, even the main graphic. Come on, man. The main graphic looks fine. I don't know why it looks like that on there on the screen, but anyway. So let's talk about 4 more players in addition to the ones who we've already done so far, who have been the last one we did was Derek Whitehead, Jordan Hawkins, Derek Lively the second, and Chris Murray. So all of those clips are on our YouTube channel. We've pulled out those discussions, all ranging from about 8 to 11 minutes. And so we have 4 more that we're going to quickly go through. We won't dig as deep on these guys, but why don't you go first from left to right?
Okay, left to right. Okay, Cason Wallace, freshman out of Kentucky, 19 years old. His splits were 11.7 points per game, 3.7 rebounds per game, 4.3 assists per game, shooting 44.6% from the field, 34% from 3, 75% from the line. Just a lot of the things I've heard about Cason is just that, you know, he's not like the best in terms of just he's only a 6'3" guard, but you know, I think KOC has a mock to like Drew Holiday or something like that. I just think that, you know, if the Warriors are looking to move up in this draft class, I don't see them drafting another project like James Wiseman or Jonathan Kuminga. You've got to get a guy who you can guarantee will come and, you know, play day one, but also have upside. This is the mold that I'm trying to draft right now from these 4 guys that are laid out right here. These are guys that can come and potentially play day one, but also still have a type of upside that I'd be okay with if they traded up and still drafted that high. But yeah, Cason Wallace, just a really, really solid point of attack defender. You know, 34% from 3. I guess that's not the greatest, but usually draft people will gauge the 3-point shot by the free throw percentage. If you're a solid free throw percentage and you're a below average 3-point shooter, they believe that, you know, the 3-point shot will come eventually because you have the mechanics down for the free throw. So 75% from free throw, I believe 34% from 3. Like, I think there is a world in where his 3-point shot gets better, but I'm just more high on what he brings defensively. He makes impact winning plays, you know, a little bit of shot creation off the dribble, but mainly just defense and just hard-nosed point of attack defense. And
in his latest big board, which was just updated yesterday, KOC had him at number 11. And I guess the minus, and we're seeing this a lot, is just these guys don't have great handles. Man, you guys got to fix your handles before you get into the league. You can't have that as your minus. But yeah, number 11. And then I think one of the things that stands out is you mentioned his height. He's only 6'2", but his 6'8" wingspan. All right, what about Anthony Black?
Anthony Black, I know that the Light Years guys really like him. Just Arkansas, so same college as Moses Moody. I think he got comped to Lonzo Ball, but the thing is that Anthony Black, his main minus, which kind of sucks, he cannot shoot the 3-point shot like that well at all. If I could find, you know what just came out today? Sam Vecini's big board, which is like 100-something pages.
Jeez.
I know, it's ridiculous. And you could just go up here and click on the player. And I just want to splits. 12.8 points per game, 5.1 rebounds per game, 3.9 assists per game, shooting 45% from the field, 30% from 3, and 70.5%.
And he didn't take very many 3-point shots as well.
Yeah, low volume.
He's
low
not
volume.
looking for it.
He's a big guard. He's 6'5". That's what he measured at the combine. 210. So big boy. I think that, you know, just another guy who I just believe that, you know, impact player, makes winning plays, can, you know, just run an offense. But I think the questions are definitely from three. But the thing is, with my kind of take on non 3-point shooters in the NBA, if you want to talk about something that, like how do they not have a handle? My bigger question is, how do you watch this current NBA and think and not like try to everyone should be able to shoot type of thing.
Yeah.
But if you can't shoot, I think that if you can't shoot and you're a guard or a wing, I think it's important that you are able to handle the ball and be a primary offensive, start the offense. You look at, extreme examples, but John Morant. If John Morant was a wing, and he was like Isaac Okoro or he was Hamidou Diallo, like you have to be able to handle the ball if you can't shoot it. And I think that's why, the Thompson twins, both guys cannot shoot the ball, but they can handle the ball and they could, dive to the rim effectively. So I think with Anthony Black, it's not that he fits that athletic mold, but he is able to do some stuff with the ball that doesn't completely hinder him not being able to shoot. Like he wouldn't just be in a corner like GP2 and then be waiting for, and the only reason I think it works with GP2 not being able to shoot is that the guy plays above his size. But yeah, another Anthony Black, I'll be honest, he's not a prospect I know all too much about. But I just know that the light years guys want him, and I know that he's a do a lot of the right things guy is what I know.
So the comp is Lonzo Ball, and I've never seen this guy play, but in reading KOC's write up, it sounds a little bit like Jason Kidd coming out of college. Now, Jason Kidd was a otherworldly athlete from that position because he was so strong and he was so quick, but he could not shoot, and everything was his ability to finish in traffic, and just because he's bumping off of guys and he's just so much bigger than everybody. But that's kind of what this reads to me. Defensive playmaker who loves to hunt or dig from an off-ball position to poke the ball away, and then when you get it, you're instantly in transition, and you're the playmaker, and you can finish. So all of a sudden, just the transition game just improves and becomes really good.
Yeah.
And that's something that the Warriors didn't have, right? We know that outside of Jordan Poole, when he would force it, that wasn't something that came naturally to the current team. But KLC has him as number 8 on his big board. And if you listen to the other Bri fits, you were looking at players more closer to where their 19 spot is. But with this rumor of, the Warriors trying to move up, now you are looking at guys in the range where maybe they could get to who could fit on the team.
Yeah. And yeah, Anthony Black, something I guess I forgot to mention was he's an insane defender. It works out that he's 6'5", 6'6", 210, and can be able to guard guards and do it effectively at the point of attack. Like that's extremely impressive. So yeah, Taylor Hendricks and Jarris Walker are definitely two I know way more about just because I've watched them a lot more. And Taylor Hendricks to me I don't see him falling past 7 on the Indiana Pacers. And I know a lot of people, the hesitancy with Taylor Hendricks is that he just doesn't have like this insanely high ceiling. He just profiles as honestly like a 3-and-D versatile defensive type of guy where I think at the peak, maybe a little lower than the peak because maybe there is an all-star ceiling there at some point. But I think the peak for him is just being able to guard like 2 through 5, and being able to, I think he shot like 40% from 3. Like the fallback with Taylor in relation to a lot of these other guys is that he can't create his own shot. It going into the even at his best, like I don't think people would project him to be able to create his own shot. He's honestly just like Jabari Smith Jr. from last year without some of the dribble pull-up stuff that Jabari has showcased this year. He's just a pure 3-and-D. I think he's a modern 3-and-D wing, whereas there's going to be versatility in his defense just because of his build and the wingspan, should be able to move relatively well. But I think he's going to be the prototypical 4 in this current NBA. I don't think he's a primary shot blocker, so I don't know if I'd trust him at the small ball 5, but that's something that you could try. I think he's more of a help side blocker. But yeah, just going to be a really solid defender, really can stretch the floor. I think that he is someone who would probably be in a playoff rotation for the Warriors if they were to draft him. Like he is he can help right now, and there's still a little bit of upside, probably just not all-star upside. I think his upside just comes from him being able to start to show that defensive versatility, because right now I think he's a little slow in terms of foot speed, but I think his peak is guarding like 2 through 5, which would be really impressive, like Jaden McDaniels type, but he's more of like the big the big version of Jaden McDaniels, whereas Jaden McDaniels is like a wing.
Mm-hmm. So you said that he would be in the rotation for the Warriors. What is the difference between what he brings to the table and what they would get out of Kuminga? Obviously, Kuminga played, he's spotting up and he's shooting threes. But I mean, on this team, Kuminga would have to play the 4 more than likely in order to get in the rotation. And Hendricks is playing the 4 and maybe small ball 5. So what is the difference between the two players?
I think Hendricks' ability to shoot the 3 as effectively as he does, I think you could play Hendricks, Kuminga, and Draymond all together at the same time, because Hendricks, I think his ability to shoot 3, like in the Warriors offense, you can make him a small forward. But I think defensively, he's definitely not a 3, but offensively, just because he's able to shoot the ball 40% from 3, like I think you can play him with some of the non-shooters that typically shouldn't play together. But yeah, I think that that's a good point with Kuminga, because they kind of would be playing the same position. But I think if the Warriors don't believe in Kuminga's 3 ball, and because of that, because of their lack of confidence in Kuminga's 3 ball, that rubs off on the opponent. The opponent's giving him too much room to shoot. It psychs him out. Like, I think that's not the greatest marriage for all of that stuff. So I think that would be the only difference. Obviously, Kuminga has the way higher upside. I'd rather have Kuminga on my team than Taylor Hendricks. But if you're talking about, just being able to help this Warriors team, Taylor Hendricks might be the better fit, simply because teams already would fear his 3.
But theoretically, if he's on this roster, Kuminga's not going to be on this roster because Kuminga would be in the deal to get
In the
him.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then what about Walker? Jarris
Walker. He's subtly like my favorite prospect in this draft. Like, I can already tell you right now, he'll never be like the best player on a championship team. Some of his questions come from his ability to create his own shot, hitting tough shots from the mid range or just creating his own shot in general. I think to me, I've said this a few times, and there's not like a crazy amount of backing behind it, but Jarris projects as like an insane defender. Like, he's just super versatile. Can play the small ball 5. Like, you just really trust this guy defensively in the modern NBA of switchability and all that type of stuff. Like, he can anchor a defense. Offensively, I think there's the potential that, you talk about what Draymond is offensively. That probably, like, to us, I get excited about Draymond offensively, but to every other team, they see him as, guy who can't shoot, guy who really, just his inability to shoot and create his own shot for himself is kind of what pushes a lot of other NBA fans away from ever wanting, him on their team offensively, I guess. But I think with Jarris is that he can stretch the floor from 3. I want to say he shot in the 34 or 35 to like 38% from 3. Do you have that pulled up right now?
34.7 on so almost 3 attempts.
And I think that, so low volume, but I think that there's been an indicator of like he's improving every single season from the 3-point shot. So if you could promise me that this guy can shoot above league average from 3, I think league average is around 33 to 34. So if he could shoot above league average from 3, people have to defend it. I think there's an opportunity that he can do that pick and roll with Steph that Draymond does. The high pick and roll, he gets the ball. He has to make a decision whether to score it or whether to dish it to the left corner, to the right corner, to the dunker spot for the cutter. Like, I think he might have that mold offensively in terms of he's a big who has good passing instincts, who is super athletic and can shoot a floater. Like, I feel like he could play that role perfectly. And I think the reason why I like him so much, there's a lot of reasons why I like this guy, but there is just this subtlety that I feel like there's some Draymond potential with him. And Draymond's obviously like my favorite player of all time. So I think that, Jarris just has the potential. I don't think he'll ever be as good as Draymond, but just the potential to be like the more athletic and being able to shoot threes version of a Draymond is what definitely motivates or intrigues me about this player. And he's not I think I already kind of mentioned this, but I think he's just the ultimate like support player. And when people are drafting that high in the draft, you're looking for a franchise changer, a best player on a championship team. Victor Wembanyama is going to change a franchise. Scoot Henderson has the potential to be an All NBA guy. Brandon Miller, like maybe you're falling off a little bit in terms of upside, but Jarris Walker, people won't never give him the respect to be like this top all-star player simply because I don't think he's going to be like anything crazy offensively, but I just think that he's going to be the super support player that you need on your team to win a championship. Second or third best player, just completely is the best player on defense, angers the defense, that makes all the right plays. I think that the fit with him would be interesting with the Warriors, but I think it would be super cool, if there was ever a world in where they had all the vets they needed, they didn't need to worry about it, and Draymond could be his vet.
Mm-hmm.
That would be just a really intriguing scenario to me.
All right, I have a couple of questions for you about the top end of the draft. I know you've been following. So, the whole lottery was about the chance to get Wembanyama. Gonna go to San Antonio. We've seen great prospects come in. LeBron James, Kevin Durant of recent memory, Anthony Davis, who come in as rookies, and they're pretty close to being all-star players, but they're usually just a level below. And then it's that second year where they kind of make that jump. What do you sense Wembanyama's rookie year is going to be like? Because he is such a different player than we've ever seen. I feel like if we got to see Chet this year, I would have a better idea about how you could use him. Is he going to play the 5? Is he going to play the 4? Are
So he's
teams
getting
going to target him and try and wear him down because he's really skinny? Like how is this going to happen?
So I think there's a couple of prospects that come around. Luka Doncic is one of them, where
Was
you
Luka an
draft this
all-star in his first year?
second year, I want to say.
Yeah.
You draft a player like Luka Doncic and you realize, oh my God, like I think we have something that's like absolutely ridiculous. And then you speed up your rebuild and you try to put win now pieces around him in his second year. And then now you're kind of dealing with what feels like you shouldn't have had to deal with Luka, where it's like, we don't know where this roster's at. I think Wembanyama, in a good way, like I think it's impressive that I think he's going to be one of those guys in terms of like, we didn't realize how good he was going to be so quickly. We want to go and try to win. I think that's the type that he's going to bring once he enters the league. I think he's going to be that good. And I think that 4 or 5. That's the intriguing part with Victor Wembanyama. I know Pistons fans were obviously everyone was hoping for Wembanyama, but they genuinely believed like he could play with Jalen Duren, just because offensively he's able to stretch the floor, he's able to score at all 3 levels, and defensively, I guess he could try and make it work. Obviously, I'd want him just kind of sitting in the paint like Rudy Gobert, and like most shot blocking centers. But I think would he play the 4 or the 5? Yeah, like you said with Chet, like I feel like the main critique about guys with this build is if they're just going to get bodied by powerful bigs who are just going to, go right to their chest and score over them. So yeah, Chet not playing, I guess, doesn't give us the greatest idea, but I would think that, that's not going to be that big of an issue with Wembanyama, or Chet. I think they're both, going to be good. But with Wembanyama, I just think he's going to be like super good, where the Spurs are just going to try to, maybe speed up this little rebuild window.
The last 5 rookies to make the All-Star team.
Blake
Griffin in 2010, 11.
Second year.
We're talking, well, because he was hurt. He
was hurt his first year. Yeah.
So you're talking 13 years ago is the last time this happened. Before that, Yao Ming in 2002. Then Tim Duncan in 1997. Grant Hill in 1994. And Shaq, 1992. Those are your last 5 rookies who made the All-Star team.
Paolo kind of had an outside chance this year because of people getting injured and just not being that strong of an all-star class. But yeah, I think Wemby could do it, especially in the West. If we're thinking about he's going to be a front court vote, so it's LeBron, it's Jokic, it's Zion potentially. Well, we don't even know. I think this year Lowry, Markkanen, Kawhi is technically front court. It'd be pretty tough. I mean, but who's to say that he wouldn't get the votes to and there's a chance. There's definitely a chance.
All right, next question is who's going to? Is it Miller? Is it Scoot? And are both teams who are slotted in those spots, are they staying put and taking players?
This is tough because I think that Charlotte would be really dumb to move out of the second pick because I think Scoot Henderson is the pick. I think it should be obvious, but it's not. I think people are weary or just hesitant just because of Scoot's size, being like 6'2" or 6'3". Obviously, like no matter how good at defense you are, you're always going to be like somewhat of a target unless you're Marcus Smart, Davion Mitchell. Like even Steph, I feel like he's like a pretty solid, maybe even a little above average defender, but he's always going to get picked on because of his size being that short. And obviously it's not short, but Scoot, I think, is definitely the obvious number 2 pick here. You watched that game, right? G League Ignite versus Wembanyama.
I got to watch some of it. I didn't watch the whole thing.
He just looked so confident and just in control that game. How he was attacking Wembanyama, even like I think just from that game alone, I was like, that guy's never going to be a not number 2 in my book. And obviously, stuff's going to happen after that, and Brandon Miller is going to play solid, and that's why people are making this decision. But to me, like what Scoot was, he came to the G League Ignite at the age of 17, impressed a ton of people, and then continued to like there hasn't been a drop off for me. So I don't understand where the hesitancy is. And like now everyone's like, wait, now I'm not totally sure who the second pick is.
Okay, but can I call you out on what you just said, which is how can you come into the league in the NBA and not be able to shoot? And Brandon Miller's shooting fits what's happening right now more than Scoot's shooting, because Brandon Miller almost shot 40% in college from 3, and Scoot last year shot less than 30%, and he didn't really take that many. And Brandon Miller's shooting like almost 8 threes a game in college.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said, that if you're not going to be a solid 3-point shooter, which obviously, in today's NBA is not the greatest thing, but like you better be like a Ja Morant caliber, or you better be, the Thompson twins who are looking to be trying to be of that mold as well. I think that there is, it's the thing is with Scoot is that his 3-point shot doesn't even look bad. Like it looks solid. And so usually with that, like I see that and you want to buy into the form. So I think there's a chance he could develop it, but if we're just going to be betting on the fact that he doesn't develop it, obviously you would have to surround him with shooters. And so Brandon Miller is the safe pick because he is what you want in today's NBA. He's potential 2-way wing who is able to get his own bucket. Like to me, like that's a pick that seems like a pick you can't get wrong. Like he's just going to be good. And maybe that's why GMs, they don't, if they pick wrong, they might lose their job, or there's going to be a stain on their career. So Brandon Miller isn't going to be bad. Like I'll guarantee you that. Like he is not going to be a bad player. There is a world in where Scoot maybe isn't good, but I think that when you think about their ceilings, I think Scoot Henderson has the potential to be second team All NBA, and I feel like I might even be shooting him low right now. Whereas Brandon Miller, I just think that there is maybe perennial all-star, just consistent all-star for him would be my guess, just from seeing both of them play. I just think Scoot is dominant and he's confident and with the ball, and he makes people around him better. And he made a lot of what intrigued scouts to him early is how like mature he was playing for his age. Like I think some of like the passing he was doing and some of the getting his teammates involved when he could have just easily, took a shot or tried to put up a contested layup. Like I think stuff like that just kind of sticks out, that you're making winning plays and you're going to be like a top prospect. I would put a lot of my eggs into the Scoot basket. I'd put a lot of my, you can revisit this in 5 years and criticize me for saying this. And, I'm still confident. Like, yeah.
All right, they're in KOC's mock draft, which was just updated today. He wrote that Shams reported on Monday that the Pelicans were pushing to trade for a top pick, with the target being Scoot. And then KOC threw out, what if the Hornets could get Brandon Ingram plus 14 and multiple firsts? You could put Ingram next to LaMelo, and then the Hornets would have more draft capital. What do you think about that trade?
It's safe. Ingram's already an all-star caliber player. Obviously you pick up 14, so you still have a pick in this draft, and then you pick up multiple picks going forward. The Pelicans have so many. They have stuff from, I think they still have stuff from the Lakers trade, and then if you remember, they traded Drew Holiday to the Bucks and got a ton of firsts from that too that haven't conveyed yet. So they have a ton of picks to make it happen. I just think that the criticism, like obviously you think of Brandon Ingram and you're like, okay, all-star caliber player, like he's going to be good. But when you take a step back and you kind of look at like how long he's been good and how, I don't want this to be a knock on him, but what's happened? He's been the best player on his team, and we haven't really seen any type of intriguing success outside of that one playoff appearance against the Suns where he looked dominant in that, but they got bounced in 5 or 6. I think it was 6 or 5. So I think if you want to make that trade, it is the safe trade. You build around LaMelo, you build around Brandon Ingram, but I think having the ability to try and get something and try and put your eggs in the Scoot basket, and it being, you're talking about a potential like insane offensive backcourt. I just would still go Scoot, and doing the, especially if you're, man, that is a tough one because I really do like Ingram.
Mm-hmm.
And how I was talking about, like, I think how important it is for your two best players to be able to initiate your offense.
Mm-hmm.
I guess technically Brandon Ingram and LaMelo would be able to do that, but I was about to say like LaMelo and Scoot would definitely be able to do that. I think LaMelo and Scoot could work because Scoot could be like the offensive, like, I'm just going to get buckets, and LaMelo could
LaMelo
be
doesn't always need the basketball either. He doesn't always need to score the basketball. He's always looking to move the basketball.
Exactly. I think I don't see a world in where that pairing doesn't work outside of like they just won't be a great defensive backcourt. And as long as you surround yourself with just these athletic defensive wings, like I feel like that who could probably just shoot a 3, like that, I think that would just be such a good solid team down the line. I think if I had to bet, I think Scoot's the pick at 2. If everything remains the same, if no one trades anything, Scoot's the pick at 2. I think Amen Thompson might be the pick at 3. But there's a couple of potential reasons. If the Blazers were going to get rid of Damian Lillard, I think that Amen Thompson has more upside than Brandon Miller. And if you're getting rid of Damian Lillard, you might as well take the upside guy. If they keep Damian Lillard, obviously Brandon Miller is the pick there, guy who's ready to contribute day one, be a solid wing scorer. But yeah, I think that the Pacers are in a really good spot. I think that Houston being at 4, I don't think they can go wrong with their pick. They're going to have the option between Amen Thompson. Maybe there's an outside chance that it could be Brandon Miller and then Cam Whitmore. Like, I think they're in a really good spot, even though their fans are super sad they didn't get Wembanyama. But yeah, sorry. Any more questions for the draft?
One more question here. It looks like Amen Thompson is the slightly higher projected twin in the draft. But if you look at their scoring and all their stats are almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I think like growing up together, like one established himself as the point guard and the other had to play off of the other brother. And so Amen Thompson's the point guard and Osar Thompson is the wing. So Amen Thompson always has the ball in his hands. He's, for some, like I've been hearing, I can't totally tell the difference. Besides, when I watched Amen, he would just have more highlights at the rim. But Amen's apparently just the slightly better athlete as well. I think the difference between the two twins, obviously Amen point guard, but Osar Thompson, you buy the potential of a 3-point shot more than you do with Amen. But yeah, very similar in terms of just like these super athlete guys who should be able to switch 1 through 3 at ease defensively and are just going to be like elite scoring at the rim. I would just put more. I would be higher on Amen just because what I keep saying is like if you can't shoot the three ball, you better be able to bring the ball up and start the offense, or else guys are just gonna sag off for you. If you're just gonna corner sit and you can't shoot the three ball like what Isaac Okoro does, like guys are just gonna stand 20 feet away from you and not worry about you, and it's a 4-on-5 in that possession. Whereas if you handle the ball, they can't sag off you because you're just going to get a running head start to the rim like what Ja does. That's why you can't sag off a Ja really, or like De'Aaron Fox when De'Aaron Fox started hitting threes. But with Ja, when the Warriors were playing Ja and they had GP2 on him like game one before he got hurt, or Andrew Wiggins or whatever, like they weren't sagging off a Ja like you would think to sag off of a non-shooter. It's because that guy can get a head start and just get a head of steam to the rim. That's why I think you need to be able to shoot. If you can't shoot the ball, you have to be able to handle the ball like that. And Amen can. I don't. Asar, I think people do like his handle and his passing ability, but I mean, we'll see. We'll see.
All right, do you know who KOC has in his latest mock?
Yes, I
Warriors?
did. Pods, yeah, Santa Clara. I went and watched him live.
So what do you think?
To me, he's like a not play style, but just the fact that how tall is he? How tall is he listed?
6'4" with a 6'6" wingspan.
You know how like a Bruce Brown, Terrence Mann type, where they are these like undersized, like 6'4", 6'5", like kind of guard wing-ish height, but they both play like the power forward sometimes. Because like, that's how I could see his trajectory going. I went to a game he played against Pepperdine. It was him versus Maxwell Lewis, who I like, that's in this draft. I think he ended up with like 20-something rebounds, being like 6'4" or 6'5". Like I think he could be of that mold, just the guy who plays above his size, plays hard, makes winning plays. But apparently, there's a lot of offensive stuff there. And honestly, I'll be honest, I went and watched that game, all eyes on Maxwell Lewis. I wasn't totally watching him. But obviously I saw the stat line after and I was like, are you kidding me? Like that guy had, like a 2020 game at 6'4".
Yeah, I don't know if I want a guy who's, when it comes to what KLC wrote about him, the 4 positives, one of them is hustle. I'm not sure that that's a great one for
winning
me.
Plays.
It just means that he's not very athletic.
Did you see Christian Braun in the finals this year?
Yeah, but like still, like we're talking about, guys who Steve Kerr will not play, and you're telling me that a guy with
Steve Kerr will play this guy
without a
position,
without a position on defense, who's just going to get ISO'd, and like you're telling me Steve's going to play that guy.
Yeah, good point. At the end of the day, like I didn't give any recs for like if they were to trade out and trade back. Like this was fun, but this is going to be so pointless when we get to the draft and the Warriors aren't drafting at 19.
We talked about 8 players, a variety of of spots in the top 20, and it was a fun exercise because it also makes you think about somebody who didn't watch the Warriors. They could look at one of those players and go, oh, I would want that person to play with Steph, and then you go, yeah, but then Draymond and Steve Kerr don't want him to play because he doesn't fit this thing, and so that's what makes the exercise really hard, is because you can't just put anybody with the team, as we've seen, because they've drafted 4 or 5 guys recently who I think a lot of teams would like, and it just hasn't worked out yet on the Warriors. So
I think if I had to rank it from doing those first 4, assuming they wouldn't trade out of the 19th pick, like I feel like Derek Lively, ever since he decided to shoot like 7 threes in a row, has shot up draft boards. But I think he would probably be my number 1, and then Chris Murray would be my number 2. And I don't care how you did it after that. And what's funny is those are the 2 I started with. Those were the not in this podcast, but just in general. I was just like, these are the 2 guys that I think can get drafted by the Warriors, and that's remained the same. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, Chris Murray, I thought that was a good one. I mean, just a high rotation player with a little bit of upside, just because of he's exactly the same as his brother, and we would love to have his brother on our team. But yeah, I'm excited for this draft. I couldn't give you a bet on what I think is going to happen.
So KOC, just guys that we've talked about. Maxwell Lewis, he has him going 29 to the Pacers. Whitehead, who we talked about last week, he has him at 28 to the Jazz. Chris Murray, he has at 27 to the Hornets. Scrolling up to Jordan Hawkins, he has him going 21 to the Nets. And then I saw Wallace, who you just talked about, 16 to the Jazz. And he had Lively at 11 to the Magic. And then Hendricks 10 to the Mavericks. And
Wow, he had Taylor falling that far.
And then Anthony Black 6 to the Magic. And Walker 5th to the Pistons.
That's my pick for them is Jarris Walker.
Well, it'll be fun. All right, what do we know what time the draft actually starts next week?
It's probably like 5 or 6, right? Next Thursday.
Yeah, what time? It'll be gosh, I can't
It's
find
next Thursday. I know that.
Yeah, it's this time next week, I'm guessing, but we'll probably jump on at some point.
Maybe when they make the selection.
Yeah, when the Warriors pick. Maybe we'll come on and do a quick recap.
Yeah, but we're gonna come in and recap the pick, and then literally, like, as you press end, it's gonna be the trade noise. The Warriors have traded this pick.
Well, we have to go into it knowing that we're gonna, because we're gonna hear from all those guys, Shams and Slater, and they're gonna have their ideas.
Woj said on the Russillo pod that he's not gonna be announcing the picks live on Twitter.
Why?
He's gonna be on air. He's gonna focus more on the being on TV, I guess, giving more analysis from that front. I wish Shams did the same thing because it pisses me off when I go in there and forget to mute them and then like see it get broken before I could actually see it. So
I know, because even if you mute them, people just aren't retweeting them.
You can't go on Twitter because everyone's just, or not everyone's. It's the fear of missing out. It's FOMO.
Yeah.
So people are just gonna still keep it because they know someone else is going to do it and spoil it for them. So
you
literally just can't go on Twitter.
I don't mind it though, because then it means I don't have to watch the telecast. I can just watch Twitter and keep working.
I remember I turned it off with Kuminga, and I just wanted to see it live. That was my pick because they'd get Kuminga. So yeah, can't give up on him then.
All right, so we'll be back after the draft for a quick one. We probably won't, we'll be able to talk about the Warriors pick and then kind of how the early part of the draft happened, unless something happens as well that unless other Warriors news comes out, we could have a normal episode, but maybe it'll probably be a shorter draft recap. All right. So that is it from here for Bri. I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.